Welcome to the Brighter Side of Education. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Hassler, here to enlighten and brighten the classrooms in America through focused conversation on important topics in education. In each episode, I discuss problems we as teachers and parents are facing and what people are doing in their communities to fix it. What are the variables, and how can we duplicate it to maximize student outcomes? In this episode, we discuss social-emotional learning, its benefits, and current approaches. The learning theory social-emotional learning, SEL for short, was introduced in 1987 by a team of educators and researchers in the New Haven Social Development Program to focus on behavioral challenges at schools. Termed social-emotional learning in 1992, its purpose is now broader, helping the whole child in regard to developing the knowledge, skills, and attitudes they need to thrive in their academic and personal life. Specifically, SEL focuses on helping children develop the capacity to recognize and manage their own emotions, set and achieve goals, understand and empathize with the emotions and experiences of others, build positive relationships, and make responsible and healthy decisions. Benefits for including SEL in education are the following. It helps children develop empathy, self-regulation, conflict resolution, and improves concentration, focus, and engagement, leading to reduced behavior concerns and increased academic success. While the concept of SEL is not new to education, ongoing research in various aspects is. Today, we dig deeper with Dr. Maggie Broderick, her recent research, and how it can be applied to the modern classroom. Dr. Broderick is an associate professor and dissertation chair in the Department of Teacher Education at National University. She is faculty lead for the Curriculum and Instruction Specialization and the Social-Emotional Learning emphasis, with over 20 years of experience in higher ed and K-12. Thank you for being here, Maggie, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I just love that phrase that you use, that shining light on issues in education. It made me think about how you're exploring important topics and also bringing an optimistic and positive lens. So I just love that light metaphor. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here, and I see that frame of mind helps you see the positive and all that we're doing. So before we jump into the social-emotional learning, I feel like we need to start at the beginning, and that is with you and Servant Scholarship. So your recent book, Servant Scholarship, Weaving a Lasting Tapestry, used the metaphor of weaving a tapestry, and I quote you, to represent how individuals and groups of scholars contribute to lasting products and processes in academia over time. Can you explain the framework of servant scholarship and then how it guides you in your scholarly role in academia?
Sure, thanks. Well, you can see from the title of the booklet, I'm an educator. I'm also a fiber artist. So that's kind of why I went with that. I've been a teacher like my whole life, learned many different fiber arts, mostly as a kid, knitting and crocheting. So as a young child, I remember my aunt and my grandma, I still have very distinct memories of them teaching me the stitches, right?
Yeah.
It's like a precious tradition to me to think about how things like knitting, crocheting, and weaving, which is kind of what I used for the title of the book, they're passed down from person to person and generation to generation. So I naturally think about that metaphor in my teaching. And one of my roles is director of the National University Advanced Research Center, ARC.
Mm-hmm.
And we use the bridge metaphor there because it's like an arc, and I'm from Pittsburgh, so it works like the bridges in Pittsburgh. And the website's actually publicly facing. Anyone can see it and check it out. But what we do there is we provide guidance for our students, alumni, faculty, and staff at NU. If they're pursuing like publications and presentations sort of beyond the doctoral degree. So typically it's a daunting step for our emerging doctoral students. Like, what's next after my dissertation?
Yes.
So I kind of went with that weaving a lasting tapestry idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great opportunity because at National, they have this open educational resources project. And they provided us with the ability to just produce our own book. And then it's free of cost for everyone in our community and actually for everyone in the world.
Wow.
So I just love OER that way. And it's kind of in the spirit of what we do. And I actually think it kind of links a little bit to SEL because it's in that spirit of just humanness and sort of understanding the whole world and everyone as a person, because OER for everyone. They're publicly available. And so I love that National put some effort in to say, hey, we're going to actually have these books and other publications that are in that spirit. And so I use that metaphor to explain sort of how people might pursue these things beyond their degree.
Wonderful. Where would someone be able to access that? You were saying that it was available at, is it the National University's website?
Yeah. So if you just Google like National University OER,
Hmm.
Open Educational Resources, you'd probably find it there. It's also, I believe, on the OER Commons, which is a typical open educational resource website that people tend to know of, and on something called Merlot, like the wine,
Yes. Yeah.
Merlot. And that's a very long-standing open educational resource community. So you can find it all those places, and anyone can download it. It's the PDF that you just download, and you can see that it's got that tapestry on the front, and it explains this sort of metaphor and how to go about that scholarly journey, so it's not so daunting and you don't feel alone, and so that you have this mindset of servant leadership, so that you are sort of giving that same idea of giving, right? That you have servant scholarship that's inspired by the idea of being a leader who is with that mindset of serving others always at the forefront, and working together. It's like a big picture view of why we do things. Why do we publish? Why do we present?
Yeah.
It's for the bigger picture, right?
Right? Adding to the body of knowledge, right? So that we can all grow in what we know and then add to it. I know as a doctoral student myself not too long ago that that's a big undertaking. And a lot of my classmates struggled with what next? Now I've done this. And then now what, because that's always been the big goal. And then you spend so many years working on it. And then once you're done, you're just like, that's it. That's it. That's all I've got, right? Where do I go next? I can't wait to read the book. And that one just came out just a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that's right. They were great. Our librarians are incredible, and they supported me throughout the process. And it was a very sort of giving kind of environment. It wasn't like some other things where you feel a lot of pressure. It felt like that lovely spirit of giving, which is really the premise behind the booklet and servant scholarship in general, that you are weaving that tapestry.
Exciting. Well, some of your most recent research is focusing on the social emotional learning. Can you tell us how you became involved in SEL and then give an overview of the 5 core competencies?
Sure. Well, like I said, it's kind of at my heart. So it was an interesting path to get there on the journey all these years. But recently, my roles at National kind of morphed because we went through a merger.
Oh,
And during the merger, gosh, we did a lot. Like we wore a lot of hats.
mhm.
One of mine was I was the curriculum director, and that was along with my colleague, Dr. Amy Lynn. And Dr. Lynn, actually, her expertise is social emotional learning. And so we worked a lot hand in hand, and we were curriculum directors together. And we also published a book together and did a bunch of other things. And SEL is very prominent in our curriculum at NU. So I learned a lot from Dr. Lynn because she had built like 20 years in the public schools, K-12,
Yeah.
doing these things. And then we started reflecting, and I was thinking within myself that that's really my heart. That's what good and caring teachers do. They're just putting it into words and packaging it. And so we understand it. So that idea, NU, they have a lot of programs in SEL. It goes along with that whole human education idea
Yeah.
that we feel like, our students are very busy, busy people, which I'll talk about later. But you really have to have empathy and put yourself in others' shoes, work together as a team and care. When we think about that, it's beyond sort of the academics, right? It's providing supports for people as a human, as a whole human. And we think about a person's a parent, a caregiver, maybe they're military, and they're also trying to be a student at the
Yeah.
same time. And so I got into this with Dr. Lynn and some others. Emily Spranger, one of our students, worked with us, and we wrote some chapters and things. And we really thought about how SEL is so much bigger than what people might think it is, sort of a packaged curriculum or something like that, and how it relates. So with the Castle 5, we started focusing a lot on the 5 competencies, which are self-awareness, thinking about understanding within yourself, self-management. So thinking about how do I manage my emotions? How do I delay gratification, manage stress? Oh my gosh, for our students, right?
Yeah.
And have our goal setting, decision making, being responsible in our decision making, and thinking about benefits and consequence. And that's really true for any age. It just changes over your lifespan.
Yeah.
Relationship skills, thinking about others, and then social awareness, which go together, right?
Yeah.
Understanding. So it's not just me out there. I've got to actually get along. So it's social and emotional together. So that's basically the framework. And people can look at castle.org and explore it. But we find that it really goes beyond something for children. It is for every human.
Yes, it really is. And then drawing from your study, integrating social emotional learning into the formative development of educator dispositions, can you discuss the 3 guiding forces in desired teacher dispositions and how they affect student connections?
Sure, sure. Well, this is also based on the stuff during all of those times with me changing roles. And gosh, when we're going through A lot in our lives. I'll talk about this later as some of my own kiddos. I'm a mom as well.
Mhm.
When we're going through a lot in our lives, we take time to self-reflect a lot and we think about things and we try to make sense of the world, right? So during this kind of very busy time working with Dr. Lynn, she and I were doing a lot of that, I believe, and thinking about our work and
Mhm.
lots of things. And one of those was about commonalities between SEL, which is her expertise coming into this, and also teacher dispositions, because we were working on curriculum and assessment tasks where it's kind of tricky when you talk about a teacher's disposition. Like, how do you actually measure that? Like, how do you say, oh, this person's engaging, this person is fun, this person is good with, understanding diverse people,
Mhm.
diverse students, and is having empathy? How do you actually measure that? How do you actually
Yeah.
define, right?
Yeah.
So we were like really reflecting on that. And we were tasked with some work for actually higher ed accreditation, which
Mm.
sounds kind of boring, but super important
Yeah.
in teacher ed programs. And we were supposed to be thinking about, gosh, how does our university do this? In an online university, how do we say, hey, this teacher is having, with itness, they used to say, and this person is
Oh.
having, diversity, understanding of various groups and empathy, and this person is responsible and professional and all these things, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure it? It's a problem in the literature. So we said, hey, SEL, you know what? Let's look at it in the lens of SEL. And we
Mhm.
wrote this book chapter and said, really it goes together. So Amy, Dr. Lynn actually said, hey, why don't we frame it as these three categories? Your own inner world, which is more of your inside and your reflection and who you are as a person. What you think about learning, like, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset about how people can learn? And then what you think about differences, different people learn differently, come from different backgrounds, all these things. So we kind of put that into practice as like a conceptual framework,
Mhm.
which I know you know because you did a
Yeah.
dissertation. So a little
Mhm.
framework. And so you just kind of can think about it that way when, if we look at it as social emotional learning within teacher dispositions, it kind of pinpoints it a little better as opposed to like a checklist, like, oh yeah, they dress professionally and they use proper language for the classroom and with empathy and all this. It's actually much, much more of a holistic
Mhm.
view. And we were able to kind of put those things together and come up with a framework that could guide maybe some research practice and policy with that.
That's very helpful when you're thinking about teacher education to say these are some dispositions that may benefit you to be thinking or working on that may help with those student connections that affect academic performance. So SEL can be often mistaken though as just a child approach. However, we know that it continues into adulthood. You have a study called Student Wellbeing and Empowerment, SEL in Online Graduate Education. And I have two questions regarding this. But first, because you're talking about those SEL strategies and having that student well-being and empowerment, how would an educator be able to do that when you're looking at the different levels of development from a child to adolescence to adulthood? So can you give your favorite strategies for elementary school child, middle school or high school, and then adult to show how that changes?
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, a lot of people think it's just for younger children, and that's probably because it's been packaged that way, and that's cool. I mean, it started out that way, and we got that shared language going.
Yeah.
And I've taught younger kids, and I've seen my children go through those phases, and it's super important. But I remember, like, it bloomed out of some discussions even way back in the '90s. Like, I would see books on the shelf on emotional intelligence at Barnes and Noble or something, popular things, and also research-based things, and it just kind of took hold in K through 5 or K through 6. But really, it is for everyone. We have this great opportunity at National that we work in tandem with Sanford Harmony, SAN, Sanford Harmony, and they have wonderful kits that you can
Mhm.
use in K through 6, I believe it is. And they have some strategies that I can share. They're really cute kits. They have like a little alien creature, and they use this little green alien. Like the young children, it's really developmentally appropriate. Like can say, well, the alien doesn't understand why people are angry because of this thing. So how would you explain it? And then you think about how you have social emotional understanding,
Yeah.
right? So they use that alien. It's like a little stuffed animal and stuff. So anyway, they have some strategies like setting goals and buddy up and the meetup strategy where you can have little discussions. So they have like all different things where you can share out. They have little cards that you use, and then you can respond. And so this helps make it easier, a little more approachable. But then it does get trickier because we don't have a kit for those older kids.
Yeah.
And a kit is sometimes a nice thing to have, even though you don't need to have a kit. But for older ones, I was glad you brought this up because I'm a mom of two adult kids. They're 22 and 18, and then a young teen who's 13.
Mhm.
And my youngest, my daughter, my second daughter, she's, yeah, that's the tricky age, 13.
Oh, very. Yes.
right?
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh. And so I was actually thinking about that new I saw Inside Out 1 years ago, of course, and now Inside Out 2
Oh,
is out.
yeah.
It talks about what it feels like to be those ages. It's like a roller coaster. It is seriously hard. And then I was talking about how, like, I remember what it felt like 40 years
Mhm.
ago or something like this. And I was talking with my 13-year-old daughter about it yesterday. We were sharing stories like how it feels. And I personally, many years ago, I remember I struggled with emotional issues. I went through those ups and downs. Some things are just really universal. We talked about bullying.
Mhm.
We talked about really strong emotions and what we should do when we feel those strong emotions. Our discussion made me think that we as teachers or parents or anyone who loves kids, we should focus on building sort of a safety net of social support. And that's a little less tangible than say, oh, here's a kit, right?
Yeah.
So, we can think about how you can carve out time together with someone to have those kinds of talks and broaden that social circle because, it takes a village, as they say.
Yeah.
And a part of that village at this age is their peers.
Mhm.
And so we were talking about how she talks on social media with her peers and she's on social media and all these influences, but having the different voices and perspectives and different people to have that village, some of whom are her peers, is developmentally appropriate. So there it's not so much a meeting at the beginning of the day with the young children. It's more of a, oh, they're on their phone talking to their friend. Oh, they're over here. Oh, they're doing this. And it's carving out that time, both in person and virtually.
Yeah.
It's like texting them and things.
Mhm.
It's similar with adults. I mean, National University, we're online, and it's hard because they're very busy people and they're entirely in a virtual digital space. It's not sort of hybrid. And so in this case, we have to build out this support space so that they can, okay, where are my peers? Where is the support? Where is the mentor? Where are these people? And it's really
Mhm.
daunting. So building out those sort of safe spaces and those support systems and all those places where they can reach out. We have mental health support. We have what I do where we provide scholarly support, and they need to know where to
Yeah.
turn if they need those things. And it's harder in the virtual thing and it's harder when they're super busy. There might maybe they're military and they're working and they're a parent and caregiver. So carving out those virtual spaces can help you make that richer. So it's not just this academic thing they're doing online. It's much more about that whole human again.
Yeah. When it comes to the learning environment online, they can be very different than being in a face to face classroom where you could see the body language and physical presence to be able to stand next to somebody, maybe give them a hug. So, what kind of unique challenges does an educator face when it comes to being able to incorporate SEL in their classroom when they are online? And how would they overcome those?
So true. Oh my gosh. It's like, I guess that phrase double-edged sword, right?
Hmm.
I mean, we have so many good things about online teaching and learning. And I hate to bring up the pandemic, but we learned a lot during that time about online
Yeah,
teaching and
we sure
learning and
did.
became,
Yeah.
right, became more of a household word. I've been in the field for 15 years, but like, yep, now everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so tricky because, I think about it like so many other advances in our lives lately. Like, for example, I love meal kits.
Hmm.
I love to get my, different meal kits that come and I'm like, oh, good, it's coming today. And, life is so busy. And I'm like, okay, that can be a godsend. I'm like, okay, my food delivery is coming. I'm a very busy parent. Things become crazy sometimes. I'm teaching, maybe I'm working into the evening, and I'm grateful. And so I'll get the groceries or the meal kit delivered and it saves time. It's super convenient. But it kind of can lack some human elements sometimes if I'm not careful about that,
Yeah.
right? Just me, I'll order a month ahead. Oh, here it comes. And so the same is true with online learning. Super convenient, which is great. I mean, gosh, our learners are responsible for many things. They're busy. All kinds of things are going on in their lives. And I think the same might be true for a K-12 online learner. They might have
Yeah.
reasons for choosing it. It's convenient, right?
Hmm.
But it's isolating. You might be doing your work alone, kind of self-directed on your own time. It feels a little lonely if we're not careful.
Hmm.
So like for groceries and my meal kits, I shouldn't just buy those and then make them by myself and sit by myself and eat them by myself
Right.
day after day, right? I should say, okay, to make it more satisfying, what do I do? Okay, share it built in. Like my adult kids might help cook a meal kit with me,
Mhm.
and then we'll enjoy it together on the porch. It's still convenient, but we're building that community. And it's same with online learning. Like if we can bring in that crucial human piece with the convenience,
Yes.
that's really the answer. It's tricky, but finding ways to make that community richer. There are a lot of ways to have support social emotional wellness, support for, like I said, scholarly support and all these things so that they can say, I'm not just doing this meal kit and eating it by myself. How convenient. Yay. It's got to be a rich experience and also be convenient, because that's really why a lot of people choose online learning.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing some research, I had heard the term lone wolf. It was like a lone wolf syndrome, or this feeling of being all alone. And that was why many online students had not completed the courses, is that feeling of aloneness. And so some people had a recess where they would say, here's 5 minutes or 10 minutes just for you to be able to talk with your peers. And there's nothing academic about it. There's nothing structured. And you could see where that community is so important. You have to really be creative online.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You have to think outside the box, I think, and we tend to just follow the same recipe, to use that analogy of the meal kits again, follow the recipe, but we need to think a little bit more like, okay, I've got this convenience, but what can we do to make this richer? And it's a little tricky to design, but I think we're getting better.
I think we are too. What's so wonderful about SEL is understanding the need for it, the importance and the need on the student side and from the teacher side, not to overlook those things. Building community is very important. I should build that into my schedule or into my course.
That's why they come back.
Yes.
The next day they say, hey, I want to be there because of the way it makes them feel. And that's why they won't come back. If they feel bad,
Yeah.
then they won't want to come back.
Definitely not. Now, SEL can be used both in school and at home, and the 5 competencies of SEL can be transferred between educators and parents, resulting in stronger communities. So, what should they look for when looking for SEL literature online? Are there any resources that you would highly recommend?
Sure. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, it's all about relationships. And we often hear about that teacher and student relationship, super important, whether it's online, on ground, hybrid. But there's so much more, like you said, it's the family, the community, and it's for everyone, even adult learners,
Mhm.
right? The most common refrain I'll hear in a doctoral defense is about their support system of, maybe it was their spouse or their kids or their mom or whoever that was there for them,
Yeah.
right? So all part of that ecosystem, no matter whether we're talking a 3-year-old or an 80-year-old or something like this.
So very true. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got the ecosystem there. So I think we have to really take that time to self-reflect, which is part of SEL, and think about that and think about the big picture, how that brings in the learner's social emotional state, and it will impact everything, as you said. So it's teamwork, right? It's thinking about the learner's path and the journey and everything holistically. And if something's going wrong in one area, it's going to affect the other areas. So, for example, if you have a student who's having some kind of crisis, then you see, oh, they didn't turn in their work. Okay, let's reach out and figure out what's going on and get them back on track, and then get them the support they need. For example, trauma informed educational practices. We have some great courses on that, and it really does relate with the SEL framework. But for the resources, a lot of people are talking about SEL, and this is a tricky one for me because in my circles, it's all positive. And like you said, the shedding light and light and optimism.
Yeah.
You hear other things. People say other things. And I think often they're looking at the wrong resources.
Mhm.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because like if they go right to the Castle website, CASEL, castle.org, or Google Scholar, or look at the library or something like that to find the actual material, the primary source, as opposed to sort of what maybe a politician said
Yes.
or maybe somebody's uncle said, right? It's tricky because you hear a lot social media.
Mhm.
Sanford Harmony is also a great site as well. If they Google Sanford Harmony, they have great info. But really try to go to the source there, because you will hear things where things become conflated and it's wrongfully brought in with all kinds of things, especially in K-12, lumped together. A lot of confusion and a lot of emotions there, and people jump to conclusions. So I would say, really realize that we have this need for SEL. It's really just human nature. It's really just being sort of introspective and understanding others and having empathy, and realize that maybe, the best source of information is something like the Castle website, and maybe go there just to kind of get the basics and make your own feelings about it, and start small with that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I find that when you start getting too far away from those primary sources, people's interpretations can change what it was intended to be. So, what 2 takeaways would you like to leave our audience with today?
Oh, well, thinking about it from all different points of view, some people might be really new to SEL. Maybe they just heard about
Hmm.
it on social media or from their kids' school or something. And some might know a lot about it. But it's a smart
Hmm.
idea to just start small. Maybe do a little research and think about what you're already doing as an important person in a learner's life. Like we said on those doctoral committees, when
Hmm.
they say it was my support system that got me here today, they always do. So think about like, how am I already doing that? And then how can I build on it with sort of those Castle 5 competencies in mind? And then sort of related to that, second, I would say, consider what you might do as the next step. What could help you foster a more SEL infused school or somewhere else? I was a Girl Scout leader for a long time. That's not a school, but if we could
Right.
bring in SEL, like there were some times when I was like, okay, we're going to go sit on this bench and talk, and this girl is having a rough time, and why don't we? That's SEL. Why don't we talk
Yeah.
about what's happening in her life and that tricky time, whatever it is? That is building some empathy and just starting with your heart and your mind and building from there just with those principles in mind wherever you might be. And it might not be as a teacher, it might be in any particular situation.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for joining me today to discuss your research and recommendations in social emotional learning and for your servant scholarship contribution to the lasting tapestry in academia.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, and I really appreciate you having me on.
The call to action is to help children develop the social skills and emotional intelligence they need to thrive in their academic and personal life. If you have a story about what's working in your schools that you'd like to share, you can email me at lisa@drlisarhassler.com or visit my website at www.drlisarhassler.com and send me a message. If you like this podcast, subscribe and tell a friend. The more people that know, the bigger impact it will have. And if you find value to the content in this podcast, consider becoming a supporter by clicking on the supporter link in the show notes. It is the mission of this podcast to shine light on the good in education so that it spreads, affecting positive change. So let's keep working together to find solutions that focus on our children's success.